Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Championship Lowdown. This week, I am delighted to be joined by a new host. We've got Tom on the pod this week. Tom, hi, Tom.
Hello, Ollie. You all right, man?
I'm very well, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, doing good. Doing good. Looking forward to a nice full slate after the FA Cup. Back to it.
Absolutely. We've got a few games to talk about this week, so we're just going to go to our normal in-depth review of about 6 games. Going to jump straight into it, really, and go into the game on Friday night, which kicks us off at the Hawthorns. West Bromwich Albion versus Middlesbrough. So, Tom, how do you see this one going, mate?
Well, I think interesting as it's first game for new West Brom boss Eric Ramsey, which would be good. I'm a bit of an MLS follower, believer, so watched a fair bit of his Minnesota United team. His football, he's a young coach. Obviously, everyone will kind of be loosely aware of his associations with Manchester United, similar time as McKenna and Carrick were there. He does not play beautiful stuff necessarily. Minnesota United had the lowest possession stats in MLS, best set piece conversions in MLS, counter-attacking football. Don't get me wrong, it's nice attacking stuff when it gets going, but it is Valerian Ismail-esque. Is probably the best Championship kind of equivalent. So I don't know.
That's going to be music to the ears of the West Brom fans, Tom. The one thing I took from this was obviously they've gone from an experiment, if you like, in Ryan Mason to another experiment, which is something that I'm not sure it's going to suit the West Brom fans.
I think the good thing is for them maybe is Ramsey has a couple of years of top level, depending on how much you rate MLS, but top level management experience. He's been through a couple of seasons now. He's lost players, he's brought players in, he's had to move across continents, and whereas this was Ryan Mason's first full-time gig. He'd done a couple of sort of games for Spurs, obviously, but Ramsey has a very clear way of playing, and I think that was one of the criticisms mostly of Ryan Mason was, well, we don't really know what he's trying to do. You'll know pretty early on what Ramsey is trying to do. Of course, you may look to evolve it. West Brom have a bigger budget comparatively to the Championship than the Minnesota did to MLS. So we'll see if he evolves it a little bit, but he's got a very clear way of playing, a squad that seems loosely fitted to that. Few wingers, few big men up top, right backs who are mostly kind of centre backs in a way. So it should work better. Whether or not the football will be sparkling is the question.
I suppose if they'll settle for, we're talking now a bit, maybe even getting dragged into a relegation fight, especially if they don't improve their away form at West Brom. So hopefully they'll be hoping that they can just get back to basics. I think a little bit with Ramsey in charge, sort of get the basics back to how they should be. Hard to beat, hit on the break, set pieces. You've already alluded to the fact that he's a set piece guy. This is probably the sort of stuff they're going to need to do now to sort of dig in and get away from that. Because West Brom are notoriously high end of the Championship, aren't they? And unfortunately, so far this season, for one reason or another, they just seem to be lounging near the bottom. And I suppose that away form is the catalyst to that. Thankfully, they're at home this weekend at the Hawthorns. Bit of a baptism of fire going in against second in the league, Middlesbrough. So how do you think Middlesbrough are going to line up there now? Obviously, Carrick got the job down at Old Trafford, so it'll be interesting to see how Middlesbrough line up against an ex-Man United.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what incredible appointment that is for a number of reasons. I think Middlesbrough, some really eye-catching kind of business in a sort of a weird way. I think Castledown's a great player. From watching him a reasonable amount at Huddersfield, and any time you can get a Chelsea academy player who looks decent for 2 million, you do it. Finley Monroe as well, doing very well for Swindon. But is that, obviously a Villa academy boy, but is that the business you do when you are in almost a driving seat for promotion? I don't necessarily know. I'd imagine they know more about me than recruitment, so fair enough. But sort of very interesting there. There'll be a few names that Ramsey is familiar with as well, with Melander and Aidan Morris. That's sort of the MLS connection as well. I think I would maybe give this a sort of a draw. I don't think either side are in wonderful form. Middlesbrough have had a sort of a hiccup, which is kind of to be expected. It was similar when under Rob Edwards, right? Incredible run, bit of a hiccup. New manager bounce in a weird kind of way, bit of a hiccup. You'd say that they're probably the better form, better squad overall, but bit of a new manager bounce, defense first approach from Ramsey. You can see it kind of him trying to kind of shut the game down a little bit, even though it's a home game.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Absolutely. I just think that the problem for Hellberg is other than Morgan Whittaker, you've not got anybody who's really chipping in with goals. The next three players behind Whittaker are all on 3. So they need somebody to help Whittaker out a little bit. And they don't want to become too one-dimensional to Middlesbrough. Because I said in the previous podcast that what I've seen in Middlesbrough so far this season, I'd probably say in two conversations. One, they were the best team I've seen so far this season. But consistently, they need to be able to back that up, because literally a month later, we went to the Riverside and they were really, really poor. They could have been playing for 2 weeks and they wouldn't have scored a goal. So for a team that's second in the league, for a team who's coming up against a guy who's just coming in, who's got a point to prove and wants to take, really take charge and set his stall out nice and early, I think it's a tough game for both teams, and I think a draw's probably about right.
Yeah, and that kind of makes you think. I know, obviously, they invested a fair amount in Strelec up top, but
yeah,
maybe that's the next place they should have gone for. Maybe a bit of a number 9, even if you try and get someone in on loan with a promise of buying them in the Premier League. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. So we're both going for a draw in this one.
Yep, and lock that one in.
Moving swiftly on, then we've got a big game next. So in terms of a derby, it's the M69 derby. We've got Coventry against Leicester City coming up next. Obviously, Coventry on the back of a little bit of a lull in form. Obviously, still way out clear at the top of the league. You'd still be many favourites for them to win the league. How do we see this one going? Do Leicester go away, get a point, or do Leicester go away and actually really set a cat amongst pigeons and win there?
I mean, Leicester are a very odd one where you look at kind of all the underlying data. They're pretty poor. They're genuinely really quite dangerously bad. And who knows if they get some sort of points deduction, we assume is coming down the pipe, but I haven't heard a lot about that recently, to be fair. But they've also got some of the best players in the division, and just randomly can decide to score from 30 yards or the halfway line, and then that's kind of that done. On the balance probabilities, you'd have to back Coventry, even though they are going through a bit of a weird moment. Again, I don't think that's too surprising. A lot of what they were doing was kind of what Leicester were doing in a way, scoring outrageous goals. Now they are a bit better defensively over the course of the season, and Rushworth has been excellent. So overall, you'd give them a bit of grace. Again, I don't think the top end of the Championship is unbelievable quality as it has been maybe in previous seasons. So yeah. I think it's almost unfair to expect anyone just to run away with it as they have done previously. But yeah, I have big trouble backing Leicester to do that much, to be honest.
Yeah, I think obviously Coventry now are starting to feel a rumble a little bit from Ipswich, aren't they? The Ipswich are starting to put a little decent run of form together, and then they're really setting the fear amongst the top end of that league. And I just think with Coventry, their play's been characterised this season by that high octane, high pressing, rapid transitions, and then they've obviously the last couple of days they've been boosted by the return of key attackers, haven't they? So Victor Torp's back, apparently. Yeah. Brandon Thomas-Asante's back, and it looks like that availability just adds to the depth, and it just puts that fear back into Leicester. And I think it might take a little bit of confidence away from them, maybe where they did think that they could have gone to the CBS to get a result. I think it's looking less and less likely now. Obviously, they do need to start putting some wins back together again, because obviously that gap at the top, although it is at the moment 8 points, we all know what the Championship's like. It's such an intense league and it's so competitive. All it takes is a couple of weeks when you don't get a win, and then all of a sudden you see that 8-point gap completely wiped out. So it'll be interesting to see how Coventry do line up and set the souls out in this game. I would I would fancy them to win. I think it'll be quite a tight game, though. I think it'll be quite tight. I think Leicester will go there and try and make it difficult. But the problem for me for Leicester, I think it just lies in their manager. I think Cifuentes, if they need to progress, and let's be fair, they are only 4 points outside the playoffs, so there is still a chance for them to go and get a playoff shot. But I just can't see Cifuentes putting that confidence in this side and letting them go on a run of games where they can get results. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think he had a difficult time at the end with QPR, and I just think you haven't really seen anything from this Leicester side, which is stacked with quality. I mean, you can talk about how good those players are versus performance. I know Wout Faes obviously is recently departed. On paper, should be a quality player, especially for the Championship. Leicester fans were very happy, mostly, to see the back of him. So when you see something like that, you have to think something a little bit odd is going on there, because the quality across the squad is very high.
Need to give Cifuentes a little bit of grace there. The off the field stuff must be difficult to manage, especially when you've got a squad who underperforming and all think they should be somewhere else. One has to wonder.
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of a cloud over Leicester for a long time now, hasn't there? And I think it just maybe things are starting to bubble a little bit there, and it'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend, because I think if Coventry do set their stores out right, proving what they've already done a few times to a lot of teams this season with the goals they've scored, could be a long afternoon for Leicester. I think Coventry go there, and I think they get a result as well.
Yeah, I'd have to back that. I know Coventry's results have not been stellar. Willing to kind of write the FA Cup off a little bit, and Birmingham home are tough. So, I'd have to go Coventry for this one.
Yep, so we're both in agreement again. Wow, 2 out of 2.
Nice.
Moving on to the next game, we are looking at, I believe, Wrexham against Norwich. So we've got Wrexham against Norwich at the racecourse ground again. Norwich under a little bit of pressure again, you'd said. Philip Clements obviously sat currently in the relegation zone in 22nd on 24 points. It's not a position Norwich want to be in. The Norwich go to Wrexham and get a result this weekend.
Potentially. Wrexham are such a strange team for me, where you kind of watch them and again you look at the underlying numbers and you kind of go, yeah, they're fine. And then they just keep winning games. And they just keep scoring goals. And they just keep nicking it. There's this kind of incredible momentum in a way, and when you spend that much money and have a squad of that size, it helps. That said, putting, for example, George Thomason at left wing back and it working, that's where credit goes to Phil Parkinson, who I certainly thought would have hit a ceiling. I
think we all did. Yeah. I think the one thing to say about Parkinson, obviously, is we all predicted that this was his level, maybe lower league, maybe slightly lower. But I think what we can say is he stepped up to the Championship masterfully, really. With this Wrexham side and their style, it still remains direct, it's physical, it's intense. And they're obviously leveraging the atmosphere at the racecourse ground. And obviously they're currently on a 4-match winning streak, 5 if you include the FA Cup. You know, a run that has seen a lot of goals scored. They've conceded a couple in that as well. But obviously, I've said all season that one thing that surprised me about this Wrexham side is it's shown so much character, and they never seem to know when they're beaten. And another thing I'll say is they've been one of the poorest sides I've seen come to the MKM this season. They were so bad that afternoon. But then on the flip side of that, I've seen them on TV a few times, and they've been absolutely outstanding. So they're such a strange side. And I think Norwich obviously have got to go there this weekend and really try and pull themselves away from the trouble, because if they're not careful, they could well see themselves really, really dragged into this dogfight, because obviously there's a little bit of a gap emerging between sort of 22nd and 20th now. There's 4 points down there. And Blackburn, I've got a game in hand over Norwich as well. So that gap could potentially get bigger and bigger. And added to the mix is the links for Josh Sargent moving away to the MLS. So yeah, it'll be an interesting few days for Norwich.
It will. And just looking at it there as well, Portsmouth have got 2 games in hand. There are not as many poor teams down the bottom. We talked maybe the top end isn't as good as the top end was. The middle of the Championship is better than it was last year. There are not going to be as many bad teams. And you kind of just keep thinking they're going to pull away, and they just kind of don't. They've certainly improved under Philippe Clement. They are winning games now and are winning at home occasionally, which is something they just decided to stop doing. So like it's not all doom and gloom, and Jovan Makama is looking inspired as a striker, despite being sort of bought as a second, third choice right winger. The Josh Sargent thing's, I guess, disappointing. I hear a lot of conflicting things about they kind of promised him he'd get a move when he wanted it, and now they're not, because they're kind of mired in relegation. So that's going to be tough. But if Makama can score a couple of goals, they'll be fine. And it's a pretty sizable fee for Sargent as well, $18 million. I can't do the pounds translation immediately, but I guess sort of 15 million quid is not bad, especially for someone who's been injured a reasonable amount over the course of the season. I think every time I bet against Wrexham, I'm wrong. So I just kind of refuse to do it anymore. Kiefer Moore goes down, Sam Smith comes in and he's great. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, my pick's going to be Wrexham because I would need a lot more to back against them. And the performance against Forest as well in the FA Cup was pretty impressive. They got Kakache back, who's should be excellent for the level. So yeah, that's where my money theoretically would be going.
Believe it or not, I actually agree with you. So that's 3 out of 3. I just cannot see how a team like Norwich, with their inconsistent, the relegation form. I know you've just alluded to the fact that they've actually started winning a couple of games, but they're coming up against one of the form tards in the division here. At one of the most, it's not a hostile place to go, but the Wrexham fans do get behind that team. And if Wrexham score early on, it's going to be really, really difficult for Norwich to come back and get any sort of result in this game. I just think that the confidence is high down there at Wrexham. I think they probably will score nice and early. And I see a long afternoon for Norwich, and I think Wrexham get a comfortable win.
It's going to be tough. Going to be tough for Norwich.
Absolutely. So next up, I believe we have my Hull City team. We do. We've got Southampton against Hull City. Another team in Southampton who, looking at the league table, you would think 15th, Southampton, with the quality that they've got, it's absolutely crazy that they're down there. And James spoke about it in the last podcast, where he was saying that when you bring in an interim manager after a decent run of games where you get a few results, and all of a sudden it just seems to start falling away. Tonderecker seems to be facing that exact sort of problem right now, and the concern for Tonderecker is that they're coming up against the Hull City side who have lost 1 in 6, albeit it was the last game. They score goals. They're open to conceding goals, granted, but it'll be a really, really interesting game this weekend. Hull City are absolutely riddled with injuries, by the way. So I think if one thing is on Southampton's side for them to get a result at St Mary's this weekend, it's the fact that Hull City have got hardly any first teamers fit. We've just lost Darko JB to this week for another 3 or 4 weeks. Balloumi's still out. Matt Crooks is still out. We're just all over the place with injuries. But it seems to be the story of our season so far. We've asked about Gelhardt coming back, and it looks like it's going to be another couple of weeks for him. So I am kind of looking at this game and thinking, what the hell sort of team are we going to be able to cobble together against this Southampton team? I fear the worst this weekend for us. Go down to St Mary's against a team who are desperate for a result. And
Southampton are kind of strange in a way, because they weren't even that bad under Will Still. I mean, they weren't good, but they were not as terrible as the results showed. They just couldn't score, and every highlights reel was just 3 good chances for Southampton, missed, goal, 3-0 to the opposition. Like, it's just, and it was kind of a bit of a Solskjaer syndrome. Kind of in he comes, go on then, let's give him the full-time job. And it was kind of reversion to the mean. They were bound to start scoring a couple of goals and winning a few games, but they're still not great at either end. really, Hull just, I saw a couple of the injury reports this week, and Hull play an insanely open style. Southampton will have chances. This is one of those where if you told me it was 3-2 to either side, I'd go, yeah, that kind of sounds about right. Yeah. It's kind of a coin toss, but you'd probably put the over 3.5 goals on. Maybe just give it to Southampton, just because I do believe in kind of the quality that they've got throughout the team. In some what I've seen from Cienza and the team with Harwood Bellis and Fellows and Armstrong in this division, they'll take some chances, but it's a bit of a coin toss, this one, I think.
So one thing I'd say, just to counter that, is Southampton have looked this season from defensive transition into the counter-attack. They've looked a little bit lacking in ideas for me. And when they do go for... that's to say they're actually going to be playing on the counter-attack, because I don't know what formation or style or anything we're going to be playing this weekend. And for the past few games, we seem to have a bit of a wall in terms of scoring goals. We've not scored many goals in the last few games. So I don't know. I think we might go down there and try and play a tight game. Because I don't see how we can go down there and play our normal attacking open style, because I think we will just get absolutely picked off with the quality that, like you say, the Southampton have got already in them ranks with Armstrong. It was a man who just put the ball in front of him, he'll score. And I just fail to see Hull City going down there and playing an open game. I hope I'm right in saying that, because I think the best we can hope for this weekend is a draw. Frankly, I can't see us going down there and winning, just given the sheer amount of players we have out.
I've never seen Jurkovic play a different style. I feel like he's very kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but feels very like dogmatic, very like, this is how I play. So, I mean, maybe he does have to bend to that if you've got no right backs. And
that's it. I just can't see who's going to play where. It's just, there's so many injuries in so many key positions. I think his hand might be forced. I really do think his hand might be forced this weekend to try something else, because I can't see the players we've got in that team to be able to push forward and play that normal style, that open style. We've got no holding midfielders because JB's out and Crooks is out now, even though Crooks can push on and play a little bit further up. Lundstrom's still out, so there's nobody in that midfield to hold at all. Who do we even play? It's going to be kids. So I do think that this weekend his hand might be slightly played for him. What I will say is, if we do go there, get an early goal, and then the real toxicity comes out of St Mary's, because they had winless in 6 games in the league, Southampton. So if we do go there and put the cat amongst the pigeons and score early on and try and sit behind an early goal, it'd be really, really interesting to see what Southampton style comes out with after that.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we can kind of write the FA Cup off a little bit, but the Doncaster result is not a sparkling one. Doncaster got 1 win in 17. It's not, and they've got a little bit unlucky. They're not terrible, as bad as that, but then, they're in the relegation zone for a reason, and 3-2 is not what you want. They went pretty strong. So, yeah, I'm second guessing myself, but I also
don't let my bias talk you out of it.
That's it. It's not a neutral opinion. I'll stick with Southampton, but yeah, if it ended up 3-2 Hull, I'd kind of, all right.
For what it's worth, I think, taking away the bias, I think Southampton edge it just purely on the basis that we don't have any players. I don't think there'll be many goals in it, but I think Southampton just edged this game.
Yeah,
right. There we go. Right. So next up, we have high-flying and ominous-looking Ipswich Town up against Blackburn Rovers. Back at Portman Road against the Blackburn side, who are firmly down in the bottom half of that league. The Blackburn going last weekend.
I mean, Blackburn are kind of a weird one where it's almost, I feel like every time I see them play, they look pretty decent. And then every time I hear anyone talk about them, it's about how poor they are. And obviously there's an off the field issue there that kind of clouds a lot of what you hear from the fan base, and completely understandably so. But every time I seem to watch a Hashi play, I'm like, that's a pretty good player. I know they're kind of riddled with injuries at the back and have been basically all season. They're playing academy kids that they pulled back from National League North, which is not what you want against Ipswich. It's just not what you want at all. And I mean, they've been, I think it's acceptable to have a bit of a relegation hangover. I think that's pretty normal. It's the first time McKenna's dealt with sort of a setback like that as well. But the quality is just immense, right? You could you play Philogene or Jack Clark on the left wing, it doesn't matter. Like someone's scoring, it just doesn't matter. Nunes has been a great buy that must be sickening for Norwich as well. They've got better at the back since they bought Walton back in as well for Palmer, which has been massive for them. Yeah, I like Blackburn, which is odd to say about a team that are struggling down there, but just the injuries they've got at the back, and just how absolutely loaded Ipswich are, and they're starting to roll as well, and that should be ominous for everyone at the top, because if there's one team that could be that team that just wins another 15 games and that's it, it's done, and they end up winning the league, it's Ipswich.
It's Ipswich. I completely agree. You just said about Clark and Philogene there. It's an embarrassment of riches, that, isn't it? And I've seen this week that the link with Tom Kearney as well. What on earth, man? And you look at their fixture list. They've got Blackburn this weekend, Bristol City the week after, Sheffield United the week after that, and Preston the week after that at home. Then Portsmouth, Derby. There's quite a potential here for Ipswich to go on that run. And if they do bring in somebody like Kenny as well, who just controls games and adds in goals and things like that, it's just going to be an absolute joke of a team. And yeah, I mean, like they're bringing George Hess is back from injury now as well. And where did they fit all these players in? We're just talking about Hull City a minute ago with not having any players. Blackburn absolutely riddled with injuries, and Ipswich could field 2 starting 11s and probably still be up there.
Yeah, it's just crazy, and they've got one of the best managers in the league as well, right? That's the other thing to say. Yeah. It's a bit of a joke. It really is, and I can't see past them for that, or winning the league for that matter. Like, I know they've got a good gap to make up there, but yeah, I can't see past that level of quality, and the fact they've started to put it together and get over themselves a little bit. Yeah, be crazy.
I said exactly the same thing on the most recent pod. I fancy Ipswich to go and win the league. I know it's a lot of points at the moment, but there are still 20 games to go. And this team, as we've already alluded to, with the depth that they've got and the way that they're playing at the moment with that high intensity, dominant possession-based football, it's relentless. You talked already about Marcelino Nunes, who I think has been absolutely phenomenal this season. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant player. He was in my team of the season so far podcast recently. It's so good this side. And I foresee a really, really big Ipswich win this weekend, and a real statement win at that. We just spoke briefly, speak briefly about Blackburn. When they came to the MKM earlier in the season, they did a job on us, and they looked really, really good. And then they followed it up with about 5 or 6 defeats in a row after that. And then, I kind of thought at that time, Blackburn might be on the way up. This might be the like catalyst start to the season for them. And since then, they've been like really, really poor, picking up the odd result here and there. And then saw them again in the FA Cup this weekend, and I am not kidding you, right? That game is 2 hours of my life that I will never, ever, ever get back. That, I think, in terms of quality, I've seen better football played in my back garden. It was such a poor game. Don't get me wrong, I'm delighted we got through, and I'm delighted we get to meet up with Liam Rossinia again in the next round. So that's a nice little bonus for us. But wow, what a poor game. What a poor game. So hopefully, Blackburn can add a little bit more quality to that, but I don't think they're going to get anywhere near Ipswich Town this weekend. And I think Ipswich win this game and win this handsomely.
I'd have to agree. I think, and I'm just looking at the Blackburn team from that weekend game, and you can kind of see, they brought in Cashin, very good defender for their level. there's lots of players you like, and then there's lots of ones you can see are kids.
Filling gaps. Yeah,
exactly. And then their injury list is, I mean, yours is substantial. Theirs is almost double. And some of that is the kids they brought in who ended up getting injured again. So, yeah, I assume that they will do a manful defensive job, but against Ipswich, you're asking for trouble, really.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be a long, long afternoon for Blackburn this weekend. And finally, the game we're going to talk about in depth is we've got a Championship Lowdown derby this weekend. So we've got James's Swansea City at home to Elliot's Birmingham City. So Swansea turned a corner a little bit since they brought Matos in. And Birmingham away from home again this weekend, who cannot buy a win away from home this weekend. So can they go to Swansea and turn that away form around?
Probably. Don't pick sides already, making enemies in the group chat. But probably
James will be used to people making Swansea look poor because they've done it themselves plenty of times this season.
Yeah, they don't need that much help sometimes. I like a lot of what Swansea try and do. I think Ethan Galbraith is brilliant. I watched him times for Orient last year when they played my beloved Posh, and he's kind of different level, just to them, and by all accounts has been very much the same for Swansea. So they've got a few pretty good players there, but Birmingham for me, I mean, I know Cambridge are League Two, but going to a ground like that is the kind of classic slip up, right? That's where you're expecting kind of a bit of a cup set, poor away from home, small ground, Neil Harris. Yeah, okay, fine. And
it doesn't sound very nice, does it?
it doesn't. I'm a Posh fan. I'm not complimentary to Cambridge, but they went there and they got the job done. They went pretty strong as well, and they got the job done. They kind of went through it. The result against Coventry, even though it was at home, is still impressive to be at top of the league, whether you're playing them at home or away. And you've got the reinforcements aren't there yet. Obviously, Solis will almost certainly come in after this weekend. But you've got that. There's rumours of a new striker as well coming in as well, Priest. So does that put a rocket up the backside of some of the ones who aren't necessarily playing that well? Probably. Now they're starting to splash that cash a little bit more in a way they probably didn't quite in the summer. So yeah, and the quality is, again, it's a bit of a joke. I don't love Jack Robinson at centre back, but he's been broadly speaking fine outside of getting himself sent off. So yeah, and Swansea are fine. I don't think they're sort of disaster, but I'm not going to pick against Birmingham City side that seem to have turned a corner. It doesn't look like the players have down tools for Chris Davis either. And when his job is effectively maybe on the lines a little bit too strong, but certainly up in the air, that matters. That really matters. And going to Swansea even under Matos isn't a horrible assignment, so to speak. It's not a horrible tough game. So I would err towards Birmingham.
Interesting. I kind of agree with all of you said. Everything you've just said there. It's Swansea. You're going to be. Don't get me wrong. They have turned a corner a little bit under Matos a little bit, but they're still not playing exciting football like you'd expect from a Swansea side. They've lost Adam Eden now for a long time. He's out for a long time. I think he's 3 months. I read the other day. Obviously, Birmingham signed Wagner, who and add to that, Borahashi Kyogo scored his first goal for Birmingham against Cambridge this weekend. And James and I spoke about it in the pod just gone. Could you see him going on a bit of a run now, putting together a bit of a run? Added to the fact that they can go to Swansea this weekend and actually turn their away form round and start winning games, Birmingham can all of a sudden be that team who hits that run of form, climbs up the league and sees themselves in the playoffs at the end of the season. I do agree with you. I think Swansea lose this game. I think Birmingham just edged them out. I think there'll be a couple of goals in it. It wouldn't surprise me if it's like a 2-1 or something like that. But I think Birmingham and the quality that they've got, like you've said, and if they tighten up at the back a little bit, I think they're going to have a little bit too much for this Swansea side.
Yeah, and I love the addition of Kai Wagner as well, because he is, to all intents and purposes, an attacker. He is a left back who is effectively a winger. And when you've got Iwata, who wants to come in anyway, and Robinson, who is a leftish back, who covers that ground, it all starts to make sense. The glimmer of hope I will give Swansea is if they can turn it into a midfield battle, that is where they can win it, because Stamenic and Franco off the ball putting in challenges versus if it's Doyle and Pike, then they're lovely players.
Yeah.
But they're lovely
for a fight though. Yeah,
and if Swansea can make it a fight, they've got a bit of a chance, but can't see past the quality. And if there's a bit more confidence, then it could go Birmingham's way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We're pretty much on agreement in nearly every game, I think. So we're going to have a quick run through the remaining games just to tie up the loose ends. Obviously, we've got the Championship, the early kickoffs, and the first of those early kickoffs is going to be Watford against Millwall. Really tough, interesting game, this one. You've got two sides who are nearer the top end of the division. Watford have been notoriously difficult to call for nearly every single week of this podcast since I've been doing these. On a really good run of form. Obviously, that was derailed a little bit because of the postponement away at our place, which was ridiculous. I might add, 20 minutes before kickoff, and it was appalling. We should be fined for that. I don't agree with anything that happened there. But Millwall going to Vicarage Road. How do we see this one?
I know that Watford were awful in the FA Cup, but that's because they changed basically the whole team. So I'm happy to throw that one out. I think Watford are really, really, really good. I understand why people don't necessarily want to pick them or see them as a bit flaky, for want of a better term, but they've really started to put together some really good form of late. And again, if we wanted to look at the underlying numbers, they're pretty solid. Pretty much since Gracia walked into the door. Millwall are one of those teams that are really good, and I think Alex Neil deserves a hell of a lot of credit, given that he's playing Doughty in midfield half the time, and the injury list is pretty stark. There's literally no midfielders. It's Billy Mitchell and whichever left back Neil decides to put into central midfield. So I mean, it's an incredible job. But yeah, for me, Watford are a bit special at the moment. Gave everyone a rest at home this weekend as well. So yes, I would go for a Watford win there.
I'm going to say draw in this one. I think Watford have got the quality, don't get me wrong, but I just think with the grit and the steel and the physicality that Millwall can put into this game, I think they're going to go there and to try and not to lose. And this is a typical game where Watford are going to find it difficult to break down. I mean, I love what Imran Luzer's doing for Watford at the moment. He's absolutely sensational. Best player in the league for me at the moment. Yeah. The one thing I will say about Millwall, and I need to say it every week because I'll get chastised if I don't, but they're currently in the playoffs with minus goal difference. And I just think that's Millwall all over, isn't it? They win games 1-0 and then lose 3-0. So it'll be interesting to see if that sort of pattern carries on away at Vicarage Road this weekend. So I'm going to say draw though. I think it'll be a tight, cagey one, this one. I think Millwall will make it physical, and I think Watford will find it pretty hard to break them down. Next up, we have Charlton against Sheffield United, who Sheffield United are a little bit resurgent, and Charlton seem to be just falling away. Charlton obviously back at home at the Valley. How do we see this one?
Yeah, Charlton and Will, is Lyndon Dykes ready to play in this one? That seems
Did
like
he throw him straight in?
So that's pure Nathan Jones. That I really like that signing in the worst possible way. I think that just kind of works. Yeah, Sheffield United, again, it seems to be kind of the real deal. I watched the game against Wrexham where you kind of thought Wrexham were going to go under, and then they came back, and then Sheffield United decided to win their next few games and have looked pretty good. The players that were underperforming are mostly now kind of performing. Patrick Bamford decided he wants to make a late World Cup squad run. So fair play to him. The Mansfield result is a bit of an odd one. I mean, I think Reed just decided to score a couple of worldies against his old club. Which, you know, I'm here for that. That's
absolutely.
I can see this one being a draw. The games involving Charlton are not massively high scoring affairs typically. They're going to scrap, and Sheffield United much improved, but they're not back yet.
I think Sheffield United are ones to watch at the moment. I mentioned this in the previous pod that I did with James, that Sheffield United and Southampton have just got to keep your eye on these teams, because we know the quality they've got. They're littered with ex-Premier League players. And obviously, you've already alluded to them signing Bamford on a bit of a longer-term deal now. He's tied down to the end of the season for Sheffield United. I can foresee Sheffield United going on a bit of a run, and I think it'll start this weekend at the Valley. I think they'll go there and get a really slight win. I think they'll go there 1-0. 1-0 or maybe a 2-1 or something like that. It will be a tight game. Charlton notoriously difficult to get through, but their confidence is shot at the minute, and they don't look like a good side. They look a little bit dishevelled. They look a little bit unorganised, and I think Sheffield United go down there and get a result. So we are not in a good.
Finally, a little bit.
It's taken us long enough.
A little bit of edge there. I will say of those two, I Sheffield United or Southampton going on a run, it'd be Sheffield United for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Tom, next up, we've been dealt a bit of a raw deal with the fixture list this week, because there's some really, really poor, boring ties. And the next tie we've got to look at, not in much great detail, just a little bit of another prediction, is Oxford against Bristol City.
Yeah, I mean, Bristol City back to it with beating Watford, although it was mostly a second string kind of Watford team. Oxford's Bloomfield's first game, pretty sure. Trying to sign some new midfielders, which I think tells you kind of what's going on there at the moment. Bristol City are pretty good, better underlying numbers. I would give it to Bristol City. Bloomfield is a nicer footballing manager than Rowett. They seem to have done the reverse of what you think they'd need to do to stay up, in terms of getting rid of the defensive manager and player, the one who maybe plays a little bit better stuff, albeit he did a pretty decent job of trying to keep Luton up. I think Bristol City are a slightly better team, and I can't see Oxford becoming a much better defensive side necessarily overnight. I think it'll be quite close though. If Oxford could nick something, and they have nicked a couple of points at home and results at home that you wouldn't have expected. So Bristol City for me, just I'm on the fence about a draw. I'll go Bristol City, but if it was a draw, I wouldn't be super surprised.
I'm going to come back and agree with you. I think Bristol City just edged this one. I think they've just got a little bit too much quality. I think you're right in what you say about Oxford. It seems a bit of a strange one, but I quite like it at the same time. It could pay off for them. I just can't see it against this Bristol City side, who seem to be going on a little bit of a run of decent results at the moment. And I think they back it up again this weekend with the result at Oxford. Next up, we have Preston against Derby.
I mean, that's no offense to Preston and Derby fans, but it's not screaming excitement. Although it should do, because Preston fourth is a massive story, and Paul Heckingbottom deserves a hell of a lot of credit for that. To be fair, I quite like it for Preston. I think you're putting the onus on Derby to come out and play, I quite like it for Preston in terms of Derby going to sit back a little bit. Preston, even at home, don't feel the need to come out and give Derby the space that they need. Defensively, both pretty solid. 1-0 Preston is kind of where I'd put this. Maybe something pretty decent, pretty tasty from Lewis Dobbin. That's probably how I see this one in short.
Yeah, again, agree with you. It's not a very exciting game, is it? I often say this about the Preston teams, and they just don't fill you with excitement, do they? Nobody wants to go to Deepdale on a Saturday afternoon. It's just not the nicest of places to go. And Preston always make it boring. But they're effective with it, aren't they? They're fourth in the league for a reason. And Preston go up by being boring. They're going to take that every day of the week. So, and I think they'll do it again this weekend. I think they'll go there. They'll play the usual boring game, get a goal or two, and brush Derby aside and carry on their decent form and stay in the top four. Next up, we have Sheffield Wednesday against Portsmouth, so a real bottom of the table clash.
Oh, bless them both. I mean, Sheffield Wednesday, Pierce Charles out now, what was it, 8 weeks or something like that, trying to get a new loan keeper in. I think it was the guy that's just gone from Barnsley on loan because he wasn't quite good enough. Was it Murphy Cooper? No, Harry Hamas. Yeah, it's honestly just what a horrible season for Wednesday. I'd like them to nick something at home. I'd like for them to do that. Portsmouth travel notoriously badly. Have not been very good this season at all. Undone from set pieces so often, which is a complete reversal of everything we've kind of seen. But if Portsmouth can't get a win here, then John Messinio starts to come under a bit of pressure, which I think will break a lot of Portsmouth fans' hearts. But if he can't get a win here, there's trouble.
Yeah, there's some questions to be answered, isn't there? If you can't go to Hillsborough when they're in the disarray that they're in and come away with a win, there's going to be serious questions to be answered. And I think, like you just said, I'd like to see Sheffield Wednesday get a result. I think just because the character they've shown in some games this season, they deserve something to cheer, and so do their fans. And for sticking with them. And I know that they did a few stayaways under the previous ownership model and things like that, but rightly so. And I'd just like to see them have something to cheer this season, and coming up against this Portsmouth side, who themselves are in disarray, obviously not to the same level as Sheffield Wednesday, but it wouldn't surprise me the Sheffield Wednesday side get a result and maybe nick a win. I'd like to see them nick a win. I'm kind of manifesting it. I don't dislike Portsmouth. I just think that I'd just like to see Sheffield Wednesday get a win.
I really badly want it for them, and I think they'll maybe have this one sort of circled on their calendar in terms of we could get a win at home here.
Yeah.
Like, this is something we could do. So I'll give them a draw, but that's my heart talking.
Yeah. I think a draw is probably the best they can hope for, but Pompey should probably edge it realistically. I'd love to see Sheffield Wednesday win though. And wrapping up this weekend, Tom, and your first podcast with the Championship Lowdown is the really exciting prospect of Stoke City against QPR.
Dear me. I love my boy Ronnie Edwards. So I'm happy for him to go back to QPR where they showed him a bit of love. Because he's an excellent centre back, properly excellent centre back. QPR, one of those that I don't think loads of people believe in for the playoffs, but it's absolutely possible. Bit of a difficult run of form. Again, we're not really going to count a win against Sheffield Wednesday, to be honest. So, yeah, it's a tough one to call. I would probably just about give it to Stoke being at home. Maybe a draw, just because I can't really. No, Stoke 1-0, because again, that's kind of what Stoke have been doing of late.
They are, and they're not an exciting team to watch. I think this is one of the reasons why they're last in our pod this week. And they just and QPR is so notoriously difficult to predict, as we've already spoken about. You look at their run of forms recently. You've got lost one, drawn, lost one. So they're all over the place. But this is the type of game that I wouldn't be surprised QPR going to the 365 and coming away with a win. I think they could possibly do that. They've got a good side when they want to play well. If it settles well for QPR and it settles nice and early for them and they start playing the football that they can play, I think they can go to the 365 and trouble Stoke. I'm going to say that they're going to come away with a 2-1 win, and that might be a bit of a shout to end this week's podcast on.
There you go, excellent. 1-0 Stoke, 2-1 QPR. Lovely end.
That's it, Tom. So thank you for joining us on this week's Championship Lowdown. If you don't subscribe to us on YouTube, please do. We really, really appreciate it. And we will see you next week for our review game. Thank you very much.
Thank you.